Here's part three of the sample essay. And I think it's important to take all of this time to see what I'm really looking for and rather than having to guess. So we're now on to the last body paragraph, and remember that's the last of the paragraphs between the introduction and conclusion. So this is the next last paragraph of the whole essay when I say last body paragraph. The next example of Wallace's essay applied to real life is in controversial global issues such as same-sex marriage. Again, I want to know what the connection is that they're trying to make. Remember, in your topic sentence, don't just introduce a subject, take a stance on the subject. So show what this connection is. I will also say I'm a little worried on this because in the example on here, not the example in the instructions on here, response paragraph 2, respond to a different point from the danger of a single story using an example from outside the United States. This paragraph can't be in first person if you include your own experience and perspective in that larger conversation and then incorporate at least one different relevant quote. So it needs to be a specific example outside of the United States. This is introducing same-sex marriage as a global issue, but I'm not seeing either there or elsewhere in the paragraph any specific reference to outside of the United States. So this makes me very nervous. Make sure that you are giving a specific example outside of the US. This is something that could just as easily be something inside the US because it's legalized, but it's still controversial. So this is not answering the prompt at the moment. Let's read through and see what this has to say. Same-sex marriage can be a touchy subject to some, again, proofreading errors, but completely normal to others. Oftentimes, and again, that should be a single word, people ignore their own flaws in order to judge the actions of others. Those who believe that this type of marriage is wrong are only looking at the act from their perspective rather than having an open mind. Wallace claims that it's a matter of my choosing to do the work of somehow altering or getting free of my nature, and this is an error, it should be my natural, hardwired default setting, which is to be deeply and literally self-centered and to see and interpret everything through the lens of self. And this, if you have a comma at the end of a quote, you need to delete that and just put the period or other punctuation after the parenthetical citation, which is the fancy way of saying something inside of parentheses, a citation inside of a parentheses. And remember, you're going to have a timestamp instead of a page number. I want to talk about two things here. Like I said, there's a typo inside the quote. A typo inside a quote is a lot more important and potentially dangerous than a typo elsewhere in your essay because you're misrepresenting your author, which hurts your credibility a lot more than if you just misrepresent your own point. So please make sure you double, triple check all of your direct quotes and make sure that they are letter for letter, punctuation for punctuation, exactly as in the original. Don't forget that with Adichie, in the same page that you have her video, you have a full transcript of everything that she said, and you could use the punctuation there, you can use the spelling there. For instance, John Locke got misspelled in a lot of the summary point lists that I looked at because people assumed that it's the most common spelling of Locke as a last name. It wasn't. It was a very unusual spelling of Locke with just L-O-K. So you can check that transcript if you want to make sure. And what makes it even better, I believe when you use that transcript, it shows you what timestamp it is from in the video. Just a nice little hint there. So one other thing, I told you I don't love to see the word that before a quote. I think that it would work much better here. Wallace claims, and replace this word with a comma. Wallace claims it's my matter of choosing to do the work. And that's just simplifying it and streamlining a bit. And that also means that you do not use this one word way too many times. So if you use it to introduce one quote, make sure you do not use it for the other quote. So this essay does a good job afterwards of following up on the quote. He believes accepting new points of view is an important aspect of life. His claim can be applied to how those who oppose same-sex marriage judge it. Rather than to look negatively upon the marriage, people should understand what those who support it see. It is important, as Wallace explains, for people, and again, missing word, to understand the viewpoints of others, and understanding same-sex marriage from a different perspective supports his claims. One thing that is really missing is this space right here. People should understand what those who support it see. To me, that is a perfect place to elaborate. Give me an example. What exactly do you mean by that? And as I said in my welcome video, it doesn't matter if I agree with you or not. It's about how well you support your point. I definitely understand what these points for what those who support it see, but this essay isn't as strong unless you bring that in. So don't count on me agreeing with you. Convince me so that even if I disagree, I may not be completely converted to your point of view, but I can at least acknowledge that there's more to it than I may have realized. So whether you expect me to agree or disagree, go ahead and put in those examples. Take the time to convince me. So again, the student ties it all together with that conclusion sentence, which is a good thing, before going to a conclusion paragraph. I will say this conclusion paragraph looks really short. Make sure that you are taking time in your conclusion to seal the deal. You have gone through point by point trying to convince me to agree with you. Use the conclusion to make me feel good about agreeing with you. And conclusions so often come down to answering, so what? You will see me write the word so what way too often in this class. Just know when I do, I am not being flippant. I am saying, why is this important? Show me why these points, when you put them together, when you add all of that argument up, why is that important? Why should I care? Why should I be glad that I've spent the time reading this essay? So let's look at the conclusion with those lenses. Everyday and global issues, therefore, support Wallace's theories that are expressed in his essay, This is Water. Looking through other people's perspectives is important since most individuals only think of themselves. The understanding is applied to frustrating driving situations in same-sex marriage. This is the student applying that. So that's an awkward sentence. It sounds more like something from a report than from an essay where you're convincing me. Remember, don't just present information, argue a stance and make me want to agree with you. So don't just tell me it can be applied. Do go on with the next step and tell me what I should take away from that application. One should understand that others, another proofreading error, others have difficult lives just as well. A new perspective should be used before impulse decisions are made. I don't think there's been anything about impulse decisions, so that seems a little bit random. But I see evidence of the student trying to answer, so what? Why is all of this important? I think that this looks to me like it's probably a first draft. Clearly, there were proofreading problems throughout the essay, so maybe the student didn't have enough time to really go back and make this great. But this paragraph is a prime example of why you should finish early and then go back with fresh eyes to improve things. So look at this paragraph and think, well, what is important about this? How can I take it to the next level? Because you've got all of the building blocks there. Just look at it and think about the three questions that I want you to keep going back to. How, why, and so what? After each sentence, if it's simple, if it is short, if it's not well developed, ask yourself one of those and then write the answer afterwards. That would let you give specific examples that would show why something is significant, and that will help you to end on a really strong note. Lots of people write these essays chronologically or in a row, ending with the conclusion, and often you're either your brain is done and the conclusion is not the strongest thing you wrote, or you're running out of time. So it's just kind of thrown together. Those are bad things. Make sure that you're paying attention to the conclusion and using those ideas from your reading, because the conclusion is the last thing that the reader is experiencing. That's the last note. If you've had really strong body paragraphs but a weak conclusion, that's not going to get the job done. So make sure you put in the time and effort. Again, if you want to look at a conclusion with me, I'm happy to have a conference and go through those things. And remember, for those conferences, you don't have to set them up in advance for my office hours. It's only if you're going to do a different time. So I just wanted to show you this last page. I'm going to be posting a works cited for you to use for this essay, and in future essays you'll create your own. But make sure this page is there to ensure that you're not plagiarizing, that you're giving all of the information that the reader needs to go back to the text. I'll say the only problem I see here is that there needs to be a space there. Other than that, this is great. And I also included in this the template that I use for all of your essays. I'm going to list 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, and your overall letter grade, and that could have a plus or a minus next to it or not. And I will always include the link to the English department grading standards so that you can see exactly what that letter grade looks like. So in some things you may be better, in some things you may be worse, but it evens out to that score. So you can always take a look at that and see how you can improve if that is your goal. Now, you get to use all of this information as well as anything else you noticed as we were going through this essay, and you get to grade this essay.